I was a teenager growing up in the early 1980s, and it was quite an interesting time because it was the start of the home computer revolution. Until that time, people just didn't have computers in their home at all. We didn't have desktop PCs or anything like that, they weren't even about yet. And the revolution was really kicked off by machines like this, the Sinclair ZX Spectrum. And there were others on the market. There was things like Dragon 32, the Auric 1, the Auric Atmos, TI 99A, VIC 20, Commodore 64, all that kind of stuff. But we couldn't afford anything like that. I couldn't even afford the Spectrum. Never owned one of them. Some of my friends did, and they would bring it round to the house, and we'd have a great time waiting for 20 minutes for games to load from cassette. But if you couldn't afford that, then your choice was something like this, the ZX81. Now, believe it or not, the ZX Spectrum with its fancy colour graphics and whiz-bang games, and the ZX81 used the same processor. But obviously the capabilities were different support hardware inside them. But I didn't have one of these either, never owned one of them. Your other choice was, if you couldn't afford anything like the VIC 20, the Commodore 64, well, there was another player on the market, and that was this. It's the Mattel Aquarius. You might have seen these, but they were quite rare. They only made and sold a few thousand of these across the entire world, I think. But this is what I had. I had one of these as a kid. Again, it's got the same processor as the ZX81 and the Sinclair Spectrum, which is the Zilog Z80. Although this, I think, actually had a clone of the Z80 made by NEC, the 780, something like that. Doesn't matter, it was effectively the same process. This came with what was supposed to be 8K of RAM, but it didn't. It only had just over 1K of RAM free because a lot of the memory was used for the screen graphics and the colours. The graphics were nowhere near as good as the Spectrum. It was much lower resolution, and you couldn't do sprites or anything like that with it. But this is what I had as a kid, and in fact, I've just recently rediscovered this in a bunch of stuff that I've found when I moved house. And I did have more of these, but in the process of moving house, some stuff has just got lost, and I don't know where it's gone. It certainly hasn't come with us. But my old house lay empty for a couple of years, and then we had some tenants living in it for a couple of years while all my stuff was packed up in the loft. And I think during that time, some of it has just gone missing, or has accidentally been thrown out as part of the clear-up process. But now, I actually have two of these. This is one that I got on eBay recently, and this is one that I did manage to bring with me during the house move. This one is a UK version rated at 240 volts. This one's actually an American version rated at 115 volts. We'll take a closer look at these two machines, I think. We'll take a look at what they were capable of, but there's no point in comparing them to the Sinclair Spectrum or the Commodore 64 or anything like that was out at the same time, because there are plenty of videos on YouTube that do that already. I think what we'll do is we'll take a look at these two machines, we'll take them apart, we'll have a look inside them, we'll look at the hardware, and we'll compare the UK one and the American one. We'll see. I tell you right now that the American one is significantly heavier than the UK one, and I don't know why, but we'll have a look at that. The other things I've got that are quite interesting that go with these is I have what's called a mini expander, which was a device that allowed you to plug in a couple of kind of D-pads and a game cartridge and a RAM cartridge at the same time, and also improved the sound. I have the thermal printer that was part of the Aquarius series, and I have a data recorder somewhere as well. I'll try and dig them out, and we'll have a look at them and see what the hardware technology of the early 1980s really looked like.